Well, okay. Good morning, everyone. Looks like we have a nice full house of attendees this morning. So thank you for joining today's Think Data Thursday. My name is Patrick Vanderhyde. I'm the Tableau Community Manager in the support organization. Joining us today, we also have we also have Patrick Byrne, who is a member of our community team, and then joining us for the presentation this morning is Steve Wexler. So let me go ahead and say thank you to Steve for joining us. A couple of things I'd like to cover just before we get going. You should be able to see the screen just fine. And if you have any questions there, just go ahead and raise them on the Q&A. There's a Q&A panel. We'll be watching that Q&A panel and be trying to answer questions as we go along. If not, we'll try and get those questions addressed. If those questions are not addressed as we go along, we'll try and address them at the end with Steve. Anything else here? I think that's good. Let me go to just a second. Having computer issues this morning after we started. Windows wanted to do a restart on me this morning to install new updates. So okay, without further ado, this presentation is titled Jumpstart Visualizing Your Survey Data Using Tableau. And Steve Wexler is our presenter this morning. Steve Wexler is the founder of Data Revelations. He's also the co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards, Visualizing Your Data Using Real-World Business Scenarios. Steve's worked with a number of customers, including ADP, Gallup, Deloitte, Convergys, Consumer Reports, The Economist, Con Ed, D&B, Marist, Cornell, Stanford, Tradeweb, Tiffany, McKinsey Company, and many other organizations to help them visualize and understand their data. Steve's Tableau Zen Master. He's an Iron Viz Champion. If any of you have been to Tableau conference and seen Iron Viz, you know how wonderful that is. And he's also a Tableau Training Partner. So his presentations and training classes combine an extraordinary level of product mastery with the real-world experience gained through developing thousands of visualizations for dozens of clients. Steve's taught thousands of people in both large and small organizations and is known for conducting seminars with clarity, patience, and humor. I've really enjoyed working with Steve through the years at the different Tableau conferences. He's a great guy, and I'm really thankful that he decided to, that he agreed to come and present with us today. So thank you very much, Steve. And with that, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. Patrick, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'm going to stop my video as you don't need the distraction. Let me get into what our agenda for this morning is going to be. And yeah, I hate doing this, but I kind of, boring bullets, but I do want you to know what's coming and why. Know your survey, getting your data just so, probably the most important thing we're going to be doing. What tools you can use for getting your data just so. The first thing you should do, the second thing you should do once you've got your data just so when you're in Tableau. Then we'll look at some sample type of questions to visualize, maybe look at some fancy stuff, and maybe most importantly, after getting your data just so, is resources. Where do you learn more? Where can you really get up to speed with this type of stuff? So let's get into what I mean by knowing your survey. It means I'd like to see what were all the questions that we asked, what did it look like to the person who took the survey, and how does that, the survey when it was out in the field, how does it map to the data that we've downloaded and are looking at? And so let me give you kind of a sense of what I mean. So you may have a question in your survey that looks something like this. Will you vote in the upcoming election? Yes, no, don't know. This is a single choice or a single punch question because I can't choose yes and no. Well, what is this going to look like in the data when I download it? And by that I mean most of the survey tools that you're using, or at least many of them, are going to offer you the ability to download the data as a CSV file, as an Excel file, as an SPSS file. And you're probably going to get the option of downloading it either as numeric responses or text responses. And let me show you what I mean by that. So this question was coded as question Q0, and my responses, sometimes you may get that little extra row up at the top that has some type of English or human readable view of the question. And you can see that I got a bunch of no's that people answered, and that's the label response. And then I've got the numeric response. A no maps to 0. A yes in this case maps to 1, and a don't know maps to a 2. Or maybe it maps to a -99 or a 99. It depends on how your thing has been coded. And this is what, sorry for the flashing on this, and this is kind of our goal is to visualize it this way. So I can see 52% said yes, 35% said no, and so on, and maybe you want to have the actual end count. So that would be a single punch question. Well, what about a multi-punch question? Check all that apply question. So please indicate all the things that you measured, check all that apply. And so I've got 9 or 10 things here, and I've checked off, in this case, the person has checked off 5. What does this look like in my resulting data? Well, when you download the data as text, it's going to be a bunch of yeses and nos, and hopefully yeses and nos. I hate survey tools that mark these things as yeses and blanks, because you don't know the difference between someone selecting a few yeses and someone who totally didn't bother to answer the question at all. Like you can see in row 9, whomever that respondent was, they didn't answer this question at all. Same with row 17. And here's how the thing would map as if you had downloaded the data as numbers. You get zeros and ones. Yes, the person selected it. No, I didn't. And then here is a possible way of visualizing these things, where you're going from the stuff that people use most often to the stuff that people use least often. And you can't help but seeing that thing that's orange, because everything else is gray, and our brains are wired for that. And in this case, hey, there's a pretty big difference between men and women. And so we're highlighting that. And we'll look at our Likert-scale questions, and it really is pronounced Likert, not Likert. And this is where you are attempting to apply quantitative measures to a qualitative concept, such as indicate the degree to which you seek the following abilities when making a new hire. Not at all, small degree, moderate degree, high degree, very high degree, or indicate how satisfied you are with something on a scale of 1 to 5. Or 0 through 4, or 0 through 10, if it's a net promoter score question, something like that. And how does this thing get coded when you download it? What does it look like? Well, it'll look like this if it is downloaded as text, and it will look like this if it is downloaded as numbers. I have an odd scale here in that, for whatever reason, whoever coded this survey, it was done as 0 through 4 instead of 1 through 5. So then that's a pretty important thing to know. Well, how are these values coded? And maybe it's a 1 through 6 scale, 6 choices or 7 choices. You need to know how the things were coded to be able to handle them intelligently when you're in Tableau. And here is a possible way of visualizing the survey data. This is called a divergent stacked bar chart, where you're trying to show how sentiment is skewing positive and negative, and I've got the positives as blues, and I've got the negatives as oranges, and the neutrals are, I don't know, I don't feel one way or the other. In this case, I'm saying half positive, half negative. Well, let's have a look at this. So I want to show you some other questions that are in the data. One is, what is your salary? That would be benchmarking data. And then particularly a pairing question, where you're asking people, hey, we want to know these 5, 10 things. How important are they to you? And then how satisfied are you with these things? So if something's really important to somebody, you want them to be really satisfied. If it's not important, you don't, of course you want people to be satisfied, but that's not where you're going to want to put a lot of time and attention. So let's see if we can, I'm going to look under the hood right now. And so this is this generic data set that I use for a lot of things. I would venture to say it might be the superstore of survey data, as people are using this data set quite a bit. So here is my data as labels. And there's another type of question which I'm separating, but it could be dual duty. These are the questions that I'm probably going to want to cut my data by, the so-called demographic questions. But certainly if you want to cut your data by, hey, I want to see what all the people who strongly agree with that statement, what do they think? But right now I've kind of lumped them all together because I know I'm probably going to want to look at my data broken down by gender. Gee, what do men versus women think of this? By location, by generation, maybe by education, by income level. You can think of all those different key demographics. Also, I'm not going to get into this right now, but you may have weighted survey data, and that's going to be a separate column. And now I've got a boatload of questions here. Like my QO question, what was that? Oh, that was my, do you plan to vote in the upcoming election? Oh, and Q100 is, please indicate what your salary is. And this was my check all that apply question. And then over here, I've got a indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree. And then I've got my how important is this thing and how satisfied are you? So that's the data when it's rendered as labels. Here's exactly the same data, but it's downloaded as numbers. And it's kind of a scary looking mess. What you've got here in both cases is you have one row for each person who took the survey. And one of the key things is you want to have a unique ID for each of those people. You've got that, you're in terrific shape. To begin with, if you don't have a respondent ID, there has to be some way to uniquely identify each respondent. So this is the yes, no, maybes. This is the yes or no's. This is the degree to which you agree or disagree. And there's an interesting thing. A 1 over here means yes. A 1 over here means disagree. And a 1 over here means not at all satisfied. So, oh, gee, this number thing can mean different things. And as useful as it is, that's why it's very useful to also have the labels here. And I know that's quite crowded. Finally, so every survey tool that I have seen, and I've probably dealt with easily half a dozen, maybe a dozen of them, allows you to download the data as label, download the data as numbers, but there's something they don't all produce automatically, and that's something I call the question helper. And that's something that just says, hey, what's the question ID? What's the human readable form of the question? And are some of these questions related to each other? Like a lot of times in something like Qualtrics, you'll have Q1 underscore 1, Q1 underscore 2, Q1 underscore 3. So all of these questions here fall under the umbrella of what do you measure? And all these questions fall under the umbrella of indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree. And here are all my importance questions. You can certainly, add more columns. You could say question type. And say this is single punch. And then when you do that, you'll have a filter and say, hey, I just want to look at all the single punch filters to get questions together. Or I want to look at all the Likert questions together. And that's fine. So here's our data as labels, data as numbers, and so forth. That's almost certainly the way you're going to get it. That is not the way you want it to be able to have a delightful time with Tableau. You will be very unhappy if you try to deal with the data in this format. And so let me go back into presentation mode here on PowerPoint, and let's discuss. Here is the data as labels, and we've got one row per respondent. We need to do something which seems counterintuitive. but we're going to we'll leave gender, we'll leave location, we'll leave generation, we'll leave weight, and anything else that you want to cut the data by, break out the data, and then we're going to reshape it so that instead of a separate column for each question, as we have up here, had before, I'm going to have a separate row for each question and then the label response next to it. And it looks strange because it's, wow, in this case, I'm repeating the respondent ID and the demographic information about this respondent 20 times or 40 times or maybe 3,000 times. And that's because if you ever want to just look at a particular set of questions or a particular respondent, you would and filter that by that particular, you will always know who that person is. Well, this is a good first step. What we really want to have is this, where you've got the respondent listed as many times as the number of questions they've answered, the question ID, the numeric form of the answer, the zeros, ones, and twos, the text forms of these, the human wording of this. It's like small degree. Small degree was answering, oh, it was about job skills. And that was related to a whole bunch of questions that were indicate degree to which you agree or disagree. And this is optional. What type of question is it? This is what we want to get. I am not going to walk you through that today. It's just the crucial thing is you're starting with this and you want to end up with this. What are the tools for doing this? Well, you can in fact do all of this and get it just so using Tableau 10.x and its pivot feature, although other tools call what it's doing is an unpivot. I don't recommend it. It's a little rickety, but I will show you step-by-step instructions for how you can do stuff with it. The sine qua non of the tools available to you for getting your data just so, Alteryx Designer is just super potent, amazing tool. But in addition to all the reshaping and data prep capabilities, it has geospatial analysis. It has got predictive modeling and statistical analysis. It's just this incredibly full-feature tool. And if you're just doing data prep, way more than you need. I sometimes feel that, I just need a paring knife. I don't need a bazooka and a flamethrower. But great tool, although albeit very expensive. Qualtrics has a web connector that will do the reshaping for you. I'll be honest, I think it's overpriced and doesn't have quite the flexibility that I would need. I know SurveyMonkey has a web connector that will get your data just so. I've not used it. The tool that I am most excited about that's recently come along, it's been around for a while. When I say come along, I only became aware of it maybe 3-4 months ago, is a tool called EasyMorph. And it will do everything I need to do to get my data just so, and the cost is somewhere between free and very inexpensive. If you have a lot of different reshaping things that you need to do, you may need to go with the pay for version, but I definitely encourage you to look at this. Also, probably the best way of doing this is getting somebody to do it for you. And that's the case. You may have this, wonderful back-end system. You have a database administrator, and they're able to get it just so. Also, not up here, but coming down the pike, there is a new data prep tool from Tableau called Project Maestro. You've probably heard about it. It has gone into limited beta at this point, and I'm hoping it will do everything that I need. I'm looking forward to seeing future versions of it and seeing what comes to market. So let me just tell you where, if you feel, hey man, you told me how important it is to get the data just so, and I believe you, but you're not actually showing me how to get the data just so. Let me jump ahead to a resource for this. So this is my website, datarevelations.com. I'm pitching it just so you know that there are resources for you. And there's an entire section about visualizing survey data, and there are some videos that you can watch and things like that. But I would start with getting your survey data just so, why you need to do this, because if you have a DBA, a database administrator, and they can set up your database, you can just show them this. And then I've got, here's how you use it with EasyMorph, here's how you do it with Tableau 10.x, here's how you use it with Alteryx, and so on. So with that in mind, okay, so here is the data in its original form, and now let me show you the data as here's the data we're going to be working with. So somehow using Tableau 10, EasyMorph, Alteryx, or a variety of other tools, we got our data to look like this. Well, now what do we do with that? Well, now this is where we start doing stuff in Tableau, and I'm going to show you the first thing to do in Tableau, or the first thing I do. You can do anything you want. So I'm going to connect to data. Let me go to, I'm connecting to an Excel file. It has combined the text values and the numeric values and all that question helper metadata into one thing, because I've gotten it just so. I will connect to the data. I will build an extract of the data, and then I will go to this sheet. And I did this earlier, so that's why I got that little error message or warning saying it's going to overwrite. So you'll notice I have very few measures. Had I just connected to the raw data, I would have just a ton of them. And one thing that I didn't show in the original data is how many people responded to the survey. 845. It goes to row 846 because I have columns. But if I say, hey, how many people, how many records do I have? It's like, oh my gosh, what happened? 25,003? That's because when I reshaped the data and took all those, that wide data, all those columns, and added all those rows, it added a whole lot of rows. So I can't just say, hey, how many people took the survey, and say, sum up the number of records. In this case, I've got to look at the respondent ID, and I'm going to right drag respondent ID up here. And when I right drag, it will overwrite Tableau's default behavior. And I will say I want to count the distinct number of respondents. And hey, this looks great. I've got 845. So what I usually like to start with is who took the survey. So I'm going to put gender up here. And I can, let me sort this in descending order. I'll make the chart a little narrower, and maybe I'll show the values here. And, I probably want this to be a percentage and not the raw count. I want to know what's the percentage of men versus the percentage of women. So I'll do a quick table calculation. I'll do percent of total. I get this ridiculously misleading level of accuracy here, as it's a survey. If anything, we should be discussing how much confidence can I have in this. So let me just format this and go to the pane itself and say percentage 0 decimal places. Now, if it turns out, gee, you kind of like having the percentage, but you'd also like to know, well, just how many people were there? Was it 10,000 people, or was it under 1,000? So we can do this. Here's a nice little trick. Let me drag respondent ID here again. And we say count the distinct number of respondents, and you get something that looks really dumb, because whenever you have something that's continuous, a green pill, Tableau wants to draw an axis that goes from low to high. So the percentage going from low to high makes sense, but this doesn't make sense, the count. So I can just right-click this and say make it discrete, and hey, this is pretty cool. I've got my N count here, and we can format that in parentheses if you're really anal compulsive, and I've got my percentage here. certainly don't need to show the axes if I've got 52% and 48%. And I can hide this, and I could say, call this by gender. Hey, this is good. I have a something that's pretty useful here. And let me duplicate this sheet. And in addition to gender, hey, I'd like to see what the breakdown is by generation. And sort this in descending order. Hey, this is fantastic. Now I've got generation. And let me do duplicate this. And in addition to generation and gender, let me do location, sort this in descending order, and I'm seeing something that bothers me, the word null, and everyone will see that. So I can do one of two things. One is I can just, exclude it. The other is I can alias this and say not specified. Also, I could group this together, not specified, and Antarctica, and just say other or something like that. So I've got location. And maybe I want to throw all these things into a dashboard really quickly. So let me create a new dashboard. And let me make this a little bit smaller just so everybody can see what we've got going on. And I'll put a vertical container in here, and I'll put gender in, and then generation and location. And I'll try to get everything so that the bars line up just right. And I do have one thing which is bothering me quite a bit, and I'm going to address it, which is Tableau draws the axes so that it needs to be as long as possible. And you notice here, 437 respondents. This bar is just as long as this bar, but this is 52% and this is 44%. Just giving you a little heads up for things to look out for. You know what? Let's do one other thing that let's show how I can make each of these things a filter. So if I want to know, hey, how many male baby boomers are there and where are they located? So I can say use this as a filter, use this sheet as a filter, and use this sheet as a filter. Oops, I went to go to sheet, sorry. Use this as a filter. And now if I want to know how many male baby boomers there are, well, there are 183, and here's where they live. And I just want to see how many European baby boomers there are. There are 65. Oh, yeah, I don't want to get mired in into the let me show you another thing that I would do with this. Let me show you where there's a completed version of this. And by the way, the source. The sample data set and this completed workbook, they're all up on data revelations on the survey page, right at the top. Say, hey, here's the sample workbook. Here's the data set. So all the examples and then some are readily available. Just give me a sec. I'll kind of show you what I was aiming for. I also have a little big ass number over here, which is something that gives me the total N count. So what I'm kind of going for is you can do something like this, and you can see, hey, we were concerned, do we have a large enough N count for male baby boomers in Generation X? And hey, we've got 332. So this is, first thing I do, I want to know who took the survey, where is the survey really thin, and things like that in terms of the demographics. So that's the first thing. We made a lovely demographics dashboard. All right, second thing is I want to know all the questions I have, the universe of responses, how they map to the values and things like that. For years I didn't do this and realized I'm flying blind and don't know where there are questions about the data or where the data isn't coded particularly well. By the way, that looks like something Maestro is going to be phenomenal at, and it's helping you see where the where you've got some, messed up, dirty data. So I'll start by putting the question grouping here, and I can see, oh, here's the bank of questions that I asked. And then I'll put the question wording. Oh, here are my importance questions. Here are my indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree. Maybe I'll put the question ID here. Then I want to see what are the universe of responses that they gave me. And maybe I also want to know, well, okay, important. Well, what is the numeric value that that maps to? So let me show you a little trick here. I'm going to right click on this. Let me duplicate this field. Duplicate. Let me change this to discrete. Drag it up here. And now I'm going to put these values over here. And now I've got my whole universe of here are all the questions that I asked. Here's how they're grouped intelligently. Here was the question ID. Here's the numeric values. And here are the how it maps the label or text values. And I can see over here a 2 means medium importance, but down here a 2 means moderate degree. And I can certainly look at this, my question grouping. Let me show it as a filter. And hey, I just want to look at all the importance questions, or I just want to look at the what do you measure questions. And lo and behold, I just found a little coding error here. So this was my indicate everything that you measure, check all that, apply. And I can see that it maps to zeros and ones just perfectly, but somehow something got messed up with the coding, and we have a Knights Who Say Knee for Monty Python fans somehow got coded into this thing instead of a no. By the way, I've not gleaned any insights on what people think about the questions I asked them. I just know who took my survey, and here's the universe of all questions and possible responses and how they map. I'm now ready to do some rocking and rolling on stuff. And so this is my question mapper. All right, let me go to a new sheet, and I'm now ready to go, hey, I think I'm going to do that single punch question that, or that, do you plan to vote in the upcoming election? So let me go to filter and just say, I'm just interested in the vote question. And, I'll put the wording up here. And then what were all the possible responses that they may have had to this question? So I'll put label over here. In this case, I don't really care about 0, 1, or 2. I'm interested in yes, no, don't know. And maybe I'll put this in yes, no, don't know. And hey, all that stuff about having to use count D, we don't have to use that anymore. We only had to use that when we were when we weren't filtering by a particular question, when it was the overall stuff that was, I just want to know the respondents. If we're filtering by a particular question, just taking number of records is going to work. Because I'm not counting respondent number 397 20 times or 40 times. I'm only counting his or her response to this one question. Here, I'll prove it to you. I'll right drag, count D, response ID, turn on labels here, and I get exactly the same response. And it just means my life is going to be way easier, that I don't have to use count distinct, that I can use number of records. Hey, so you're probably looking at this and going, well, that's great, 182, 121, 46. I want to do this as a percentage. So yeah, I'll do a quick table calculation. I'll say percent of total. And you know what? This percent of total might be so useful. Let me drag it over here and use it again. I'll call it percent of total. And let me right-click it, change its default properties, number format, and let me make a percentage 0 decimal places. That feels so much better. Also, if you want to see what's under the hood, what it's saying is add up the number of records for, in this case, this row. That's some number of records, and divide it by the total number of records, total sum number of records. That's how it's getting the percentage over here. So, I'll call this vote an upcoming election. And I don't even need this here, the wording here at this point. Don't need this. Yes, no, don't know. And hey, I'm wondering, is there an interesting difference between men and women? So I'll put gender up here. Oh, that's not, it's hard for me to compare the 50% with the 55% because they're not right next to each other. So maybe if I put gender on rows, oh, wait a second. Well, that's right, 50% of women versus 55% of men, but if I put it over here, well, that's totally screwed up. And that's because our compute using, and I'm hoping to shed some light on something which a lot of people have problems with, and I certainly struggled with, which is, it's compute using for the whole table. I just need to do it among the male responses and the female responses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edit the table calculation. I want you to see what's in here. And I'm going to say by specific dimensions. And what I want to do is turn off gender. And what that says is I want to compute this by yes and no and don't know for all the females. And when you get to the next gender or next thing in the partition, the next choice, the next option, start over again. Let's now put this up here and you'll see what I mean. Compute this by yes, no, don't know, by label. And when you're done with the women, start over again and do the compute using for the men. So that means if I then put generation up here and do this, hey, it gets some interesting things here, which is 20% of the traditionalists, that is a possible name to call the generation that came before the baby boomers, don't plan to vote. And only 40% of them, or 20% don't know, only 40% of them are planning to vote. Fascinating if you're into this type of breaking down by demographics. All right, so that is a single punch question. Let me kind of, I'm going to want to leave 10 minutes for questions. So let me do a check all that apply question. So let me put my question grouping into filters, and I just want to look at the indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree questions. And I am going to put my wording up here. And now, if you'll recall, if I look at my question mapper for this, people could only put a 0 or a 1. So if they indicated they did something, that yes, that is something that I do, that's something that I measure, they put in a 1. Otherwise, they put in a 0. If they put a 1 or a blank in, I've got a blog post that will show you how to deal with all of that. So I'm going to create a calculated field that looks at the 0s and the 1s and figures out what is the percentage of people that can play jazz, good ability to lift a, oop, this is the wrong thing. Question grouping was, what do you measure? This is a check all that apply question. There we go. Do I measure adrenaline production? Do I measure blood pressure and so forth? And here is the calculation I'm going to fashion. Okay, this will be percent check all that apply. Now remember, they can either put a 0 or a 1. So I'm going to say sum of value. And it's going to look at the first person and say, did you check this thing off? You did? I'm counting you. You over there, do you check that thing off? Well, I'm not counting you. So 1 plus 0 is 1. Hey, person in the back, do you check this off? You did? Okay. 1 plus 0 plus 1 is 2. And divide that by the total number of people who responded. And that's how we get a check all that apply question. Put this over here, put check all that apply up on columns, put this in descending order, and let's make this look nice. Let me change the default properties to number format, percentage, show the values, and here are your results. Cool thing about this is I'm not doing a table calculation here. Super simple stuff. It's just to add up all the people who put a 1 in that box, meaning they checked it off, divide by the total number of people. It means if I break down by demographic, I don't have to do any fancy compute using, figuring out the partitions or anything like that. So that is a check all that apply question. Let me quickly, look at a couple of ways of doing Likert data. And so let's go to one of our Likert-scale questions and show you some of the issues that pertain to it. So let me go to my question grouping, and I think I'm going to do the indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree question. And let me put my wording up here. And let me then go to town with this thing and put number of records on columns, and let me put the label on color, and let me do, this is a hot, ugly mess. Or if those of you who have read the big book of dashboards, we refer to this as a screaming cat. Hold on, let me do percent, quick table calculation, percent of total. And let me do table across so that everything adds up to 100%. And oh my God, this is just so bad. Hold on, high degree, very high degree, then high degree, then moderate degree, then small degree. Let me change the colors, edit the colors so that we have something that makes a little more sense. I'm going to try to make this thing look less awful. Let me go to colorblind colors, and if you strongly agree, I'll make it a dark blue. Moderate degree, you're kind of neutral. Small degree is this, and not at all is a darker orange. Maybe if I sort this thing, maybe I get rid of the it's horrible. I can make it less crappy, but this 100% stacked bar chart, bad way to view this type of thing. So there are a whole bunch of ways that are better. Certainly, by the way, turning this off makes it a little easier to read, and if I were to sort this thing intelligently, it would make it a little easier to read. And maybe if I'm only interested in the people that chose very high or high degree, all these things are making this easier. I'm not able to easily poll you right now, but if I were to ask people who are participating, hey, how many of you are familiar with the concept of the top two boxes or top two box? So if you think of the question, we asked people, indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree. We gave people 5 choices, and a lot of times people want to know what are the percentage of people that said strongly agree or agree, or very important or important, or critical, very satisfied and satisfied. So this concept of percent top 2 boxes, we see this all the time. Let me duplicate this sheet. Let me get rid of this some number of records and label on this thing. So I want to show you how we can easily create a percent top 2 boxes, excuse me, and then glean some pretty good insights for it. So if we go back to our question mapper and I indicate the degree to which you agree or disagree, the top 2 boxes, very high degree or high degree, are a 3 or a 4. Okay, good to know that, because I'm going to create a new calculated field called percent top 2. It kills me to not say boxes, but I know most people say percent top 2 box. I'll say boxes, and I'm going to say if the value is greater than or equal to 3, then count that person. Else, don't count them. right? Take all this and divide it by the number of people that answered. And I've got percent top 2 boxes. Sort this in descending order. And, I'm a big fan of change the default number properties as opposed to every time I use this thing, realizing I've got, it's doing it as decimals. So default number properties, number format, percentage, 0 decimal places. Now, I'm going to show you one slick thing, and then I'm going to show you where there are a whole bunch of resources for getting up to speed with this, and as well as a nice gotcha that we're going to see in a minute. Suppose someone says, hey, can you also show me the percentage of people that chose the top box, not just the top 2 boxes? Yeah, I could create another calculated field here, and it said, if it's equal to 4, instead of greater than or equal to 3 or 4. Or I'll create a parameter called how many boxes, and make it an integer value list, and you can show me the top box, second box, or third box. It's people who chose only the top 1, the top 2, or the top 3. Let me show this parameter control. It's not doing anything. And then I'm going to edit this. So instead of it being hard-coded as greater than or equal to 3, it's going to be greater than or equal to 5 minus how many boxes? Think about it for a second. If you're thinking, why is it 5? You only had values that went from 0 to 4. Well, top 2 boxes was greater than or equal to 3. 5 minus 2, greater than or equal to 3. Top box would be just choosing 4, so 5 minus 1. So I've now got this pretty cool thing, but let me turn these things off for a minute. Hey, percentage of people that chose top box, top 2 boxes, top 3 boxes, man, these values are changing wildly, but the axis is being redrawn so that it's however long the axis needs to be. So yeah, it's 94% here. I want to see that it's a lot less, and that this is a lot less, these big bars. So there's a variety of ways we can fix this, and that's where I'm going to shift in a minute to some good resources. My least favorite way is I can edit the axes and fix the axes to go from 0 to 100%. Hey, percentage of people who chose the top 2 things, percentage of people that chose the top 3 things. So let's shift gears for a second and want to just discuss the website. Yes, I do offer online classes on this, and that will be my brief plug for this. I've got one coming up. The next open one is January 16th through 18th. But skipping that, okay, click to download Tableau's white paper, click to download the PowerPoint and packaged workbooks from the 2014 conference. A lot of good stuff in there. You can watch the presentation. Click to download. Oh, this has packaged workbooks and examples. So the source data and the packaged workbooks are available. Here's the getting your survey data just so. That second thing you should do, dealing with survey tools that don't code check all that apply questions correctly. You got those, instead of 1s and 0s, you got 1s and blanks. Working with weighted survey data, and then showing percentages. Look out for these pitfalls. That thing where we saw that the 90%, the bar was as long as 73%, was as long as 22%. I've got a blog post. Sorry about the flickering on there. But I'm trying to show how to address this. And so what I'm trying to, here I'm showing top two boxes, and I'm kind of filling in where 100% would go. So now if I just show the top box, top two boxes, top three boxes, I've kind of got this technique where I'm showing where 100% capacity is. Also, with respondent demographics, we've got to get a similar thing. You know, that when we had location versus gender, these bars were the same length. So I have a technique for, well, how do I make sure that doesn't mislead people? And just to show you the no reference version, if I don't have some way of dealing with the normalizing the axes, you know, I get stuff that looks like this. Also, I have got in here exactly how to get, let me go back to the top, go to visualizing survey data, that if you want to learn how to do that divergent stacked bar chart, step-by-step instructions, or how to deal with importance versus satisfaction. Yeah, by all means, read the blog post and see how this thing works, but to be honest, you can just download the workbook and copy and paste all the formulas. So that's what I do. I haven't built one of these things from scratch in like 5 years. You can even see it's got, you know, ancient version of my logo on this thing. I'll just open it up, see how it ticks, and then take it from there. So yeah, this is a little bit of a drinking from a fire hose type of thing. So if I were to recommend things, by all means, you can watch the video from it's dated because they're better techniques and they're better tools, but definitely getting the survey data just so. Highly encourage you to look at EasyMorph. You can pick and choose which thing. If you're dealing with weighted survey data, I take you through exactly what you need to do. Likert-scale questions, important versus satisfaction. There's definitely you know, different ways to show this, and I kind of walk you through different approaches. This is my favorite approach for it. And I'm sure you'll find other things that float your boat. Intra question analysis, instead of just cutting by demographics, it's, hey, people responded this way. I need to revisit that. I think there are better ways to do it than what I've got in there, but it will certainly get you headed in the right direction. So we got through a lot of stuff. I wasn't able to build you the divergent stacked bar chart, but we're able to kind of go through this pretty quickly. Let me set up at this point, let me go to Q&A, and let me see what questions I have here. Priyanka asks, Patrick, do you want to weigh in on this, or what we need to?
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is. Is there a way to do voice of customer analysis in Tableau?
I've seen many people doing that. That's kind of what we're. It's just a survey is a survey is a survey.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, and a lot of people are doing that. So I've gone to the Q&A panel. If you should have that in your Zoom webinar. Once you pivot on a question, can you use that as a filter? So it sounds like at Lyra, what you are asking is, hey, I want to filter in the same way you filtered by gender, the same way you filtered by location. I want to filter by this question, do you plan to vote in the upcoming election? That topic is intra-question analysis. The easiest way to do that is both leave it pivoted and leave it unpivoted. Copy that column so it becomes a separate column. But there are a whole bunch of ways for dealing with that. I address it. I'm overdue to do a better job on it. Yep, I say, and there's Michael, my dear friend Michael Diamond, asking the same thing. And Michael, I have a bunch of blog posts on this, which is, hey, people who said this versus this on a scatter plot. The problem is all the values cluster in one place. They all cluster around 3, 2, 1s, etc. How do you show that? The importance versus satisfaction, we can do some really cool things. So I do have some blog posts on that. And Vandana is asking, Steve, will you be doing a webinar showing a few more techniques such as instances when you want to hide results for too few responses? This workbook is on your Tableau profile, but your discussing insights is very helpful. Vandana, there's a blog post that explains exactly how to do that. So it's on my profile. But there's also a blog post for doing this, and I certainly covered this in my online classes. So, but if that's all you need to get, I think you can just read the blog post. You certainly wouldn't need to take the class for that. Okay, so I've got some nice comments in the Zoom webinar chat. Thank you. I'm glad you're finding it useful. And are there any other questions or things that you'd like me to address? So a few people have commented about Maestro. I'm very keen on seeing what things it has, what it doesn't. At this point, I'm very happy with Easy Morph because for the vast majority of things that people need to do, you can probably just use the free version of the tool. But even then, Julia Summer is asking, can Tableau handle weighted data? Yes, and I have an entire blog post that tells you exactly what you need to do to deal with the weighted data, how to deal with it, check all that applies, single punch, Likert-scale questions, etc. So it handles it great.
There's a question in the Q&A. Program Katie Clark asks, the program my client uses does not produce numeric output. Is it worth the work to create a numeric version of the data set?
Katie, that's a great question, and thanks, Patrick. Probably. You could certainly do a whole bunch of if-then, conditional stuff. And for years, it didn't occur to me to combine them both. If you look at these early blog posts, you're going to see I'm using one or the other. But I might think it would be worthwhile to create something that maps everything, because sometimes it's just so useful to have that number. Oh, the halfway point is 3. I don't want to have, oh, in this case, the halfway point is moderate degree. And in this case, this other question, the halfway point is neutral, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it might be worth creating that thing that replicates it, maps all the values. Ooh, great question, Fanchon. If I'm pronouncing the name correctly. How do I handle displaying narrative responses, which is open verbatim questions? Fine question. I don't do that. I know that's a horrible, horribly unsatisfying answer to your question. Someplace you're going to need to perform some form of sentiment analysis on this, where it clusters the responses in some way, and then you view that. So a variety of different tools out there for reading the text. The reliability is pretty, isn't going to be great. SPSS does this, Odin Text does this. There are a variety of different tools for it. I rely on somebody else doing that analysis, mapping the things, and then moving it from there. So Jessica is asking, I would like to only display the highest percentage of a select all that apply question. Is there a way to do this? The highest percentage of a select all that apply, you mean the top 3 results? Rank by the top 3 and just see what those were. There is a blog post about that. So here are 2 places for this. And I know I'm going, a minute over. This is, hold on. How many people selected 1, 2, or 3 items? I'm going to, and you're going, no, that's not what I asked. I wanted to ask just the people who chose. So right here, I just want to see the top 5, adrenaline production, metabolism, blood pressure, breathing, pulse rate, and I don't want to see the rest. Well, you notice that I've got a ranking here, and then it's just a matter of putting a filter in for the ranking. But down at the bottom here, this is taking a while to get to this, but let's say I want to break this down by generation. And so I'm seeing overall adrenaline production, metabolism, blood pressure, breathing, and pulse rate. And I want to look at blood pressure. And I'll see, oh, it ranks, for traditionalists, it ranks number 5 at only 29%. But for baby boomers, it's 63%. And I can also see the grouping of it over here. To only show, so this is, I'm going to steer you to this. Notice I call this showing rank and magnitude. So I'm showing rank. I could just say, filter this by the top 5. But I've got another blog post about this. Hold on. That will show you how to, specifically how to filter. Hey, I've got 100 things. I only want to see the top 10. Visual ranking within a category. Also, this is covered in the big book of dashboards, specifically with sales data. And we've got that, and bigbookofdashboards.com has the workbook. Okay. Brendan Duggan asks, do you have any general advice on building a dashboard with a survey with dozens of items? At what point will bars or divergent bars just look too crowded? Well, you can't have hundreds of them because there's no way to take that in and sort from highest to lowest. So I'm guessing more than 20. It's, gee, you really asked more than 20 things? Dang. Or you group them and allow people to see them in different groups. So a question about, Gina, the question about displaying significance testing. Yeah, I got a blog post about that as well. And on Big Book of Dashboards, I've got a whole thing about that. So if you just go here and you type significant, what to do, hold on, it's here, it's called showing now versus then. I've got way better versions of this, but this is the percentage of people that promoted. And you notice that there is I can't miss seeing the red dot because human brains are wired to see things like that red dot, and that means the change from the previous period was significant. Click for explanation. You can program a z-test for statistical significance, and this is the one that I'm using. Build it right into Tableau. And I can choose whether I'm looking for a 90% significance or a 95% significance. So it's here, explain how to do it. I will be frank with you, it is not the easiest thing to make happen, but just steal what's in this workbook. Just go, explain how it works. Your stat, you may be I do not have a statistics background. Someone gave me this formula and I used it and I had enough confidence in it, but there are other ways of doing stat testing, but you should be able to figure out how to get that happening in Tableau. Also, there's a way better version of this in the Big Book of Dashboards. So with that, Patrick, any parting thoughts, or are we in pretty good shape?
Yeah, this is great, Steve. A couple of thoughts I just had I wanted to share is I love how well you document using Tableau right here in this dashboard. This is a great example. I think there's a lot to be learned for everyone just by copying the workbooks and looking at those and seeing how well you document your own dashboards out. So I thank you for that as well. It's a great practice. And then the other thing I noticed in here was a little bit of table calculations in there and in our morning session, and for folks that are learning table calculations, it's a good start to see percentage of totals, and table calculations are a powerful feature in Tableau, and it's great to kind of see that in there as well this morning too. So
hey, I'm going to show, wait, Patrick, I'm going to show, and anyone who's still here, and I have no idea who's still here.
Oh, we still got a good crowd. Yep.
Oh, okay. So hey, haven't shown this to anybody yet. Well, not quite. I sent it to a couple of colleagues, but hey, I want to show filtered versus unfiltered results. So, if I show everybody, okay, the green dot is when I apply filters, and the gray dot is everybody that responded to the question. So I'm going to take people out, and here's a way to gauge the difference between, so the gray dot is everybody, and the green dot is just the not specified, and, well, we don't care about those, just the North American women. There we go. Ooh, wow, big difference here. And there's a big difference here where the North American women are far less than the general population, and here the North American women are far more. It's because you said table calculation, and I almost got away with an entire webinar without saying level of detail calculation. Turns out the mechanism for doing filtered versus unfiltered, although I think you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table, because I may want to compare the baby boomers versus Generation X, but this is a blog post that is in the works of how do I show filtered versus unfiltered, and you can see. I'm experimenting with all sorts of different ways to show this, not convinced that any one way is the best way. But I think I like this one, the kind of colored line showing way more filtered, way more unfiltered here. So I think we're good. So thanks for mentioning table calculation. And
yeah, brought the LODs in there for us.
Yeah. They almost got out of here without me hitting them. Can't let that happen.
So I was going to say, anytime a question comes up in the community relating to survey data, if you come into our community forums, you'll see that I tend to point people towards Steve's wonderful site, Data Revelations, because the resources there are so great and so detailed that it's almost preferable to go there than anywhere else. So that's definitely it's been a privilege to have you, Steve, do this presentation this morning. I really thank you a lot. This presentation has been recorded. I'll have it up on our YouTube channel later today. For those that are curious where that is, I went ahead and put the link in the chat session, but it's if you go to the Tableau software on YouTube, you'll find a list of playlists. One of the playlists is called Think and Talk Data, and this is where we record or where we place all of the recordings from the Think Data Thursday. And I usually have this up within just an hour or two after the event. Just kind of depends on how long it takes it to process and for me to trim up the edges of each side of the presentation and get it up there. So thank you again, Steve. And
My
thanks
pleasure.
for coming.
Thanks for asking, Patrick. Always a delight.
Thank you. And then thanks for all our participants, for everybody coming along this morning and watching. We had quite a big crowd, so thanks again. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call us into the meeting. Thank you.